day and welcome to another edition of Vantage Point. I'm your host, Svetlana Marshall. Today we'll be talking about the 2020 elections and an upcoming rally that the APNU+AFC coalition is hosting. That rally is set for Friday the 24th and it will be held in Golden Grove on the east coast of Demerara. To tell us more about the rally, we have in studio our Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs, Mr. Basil Williams, and a communication officer, Ms. Akisha Budi. Attorney General Akisha, thank you so much for coming.
So thank you for having me here, Svetlana. We're happy to be here.
So the APNU+AFC is gearing up for this massive rally that is set for Friday at Golden Grove. And before we talk about the rally, I know that you came into, when the APNU+AFC came into government, you were appointed Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs. But I want to take you back before 2015, your work on the East Coast. You were the campaign manager for that corridor when it comes to the APNU+AFC. Tell me about the work you were able to do prior to 2015.
Well, I was introduced to the East Coast, around 1999. Then leader of the PNC, former President Hoyt, identified me to be the representative on the East Coast. And I recall that was the third time, as you all know, and it was a rough time on the East Coast, but a lot of work was done during that period, and then you had a period of the Troubles. So the East Coast was always a busy corridor for us. I recall that we had elections in 2001. Of course, before that, there were post-elections scenarios in 1997, and that was a period in which you had the Hordmanson Accord and the St. Lucia statement and all that, and from that there was this proposal to do some constitutional amendments, and that was when the local government reform task force was introduced. Mr. Hoyt had appointed me as a member. There were other members, including Vincent Elizondo, etc. And I recall too that after the 2001 elections, former President Hoyt told me, this new arrangement that you have to get 1/3 women on the list and things like that, he was finding it difficult to make his elections, but he said I should not worry because he was grateful for the work that I had been doing. And he said that we wouldn't be able to find a place for me on the list, but he can assure me that the first vacancy that arises, he would ask me to fill that vacancy.
You spoke about the period of the Troubles, and I want to take you back there.
But let me complete the story because
okay.
Unfortunately, the next vacancy was created by former President Hoyt's death, and that's when I entered Parliament in his stead. The troubles, as the world knows, is that period when Ghana when the East Coast was a killing field, and hundreds of youths, young lads, lost their lives. And it was a very dark period on the East Coast, and liberties were virtually suspended. Young boys left their mothers' homes, and it was a luck whether they returned. A lot of them ended up not going back home, missing. Some are missing until today. And so it was a very dark page. And we hope that we would turn that page. Of course, a lot of people still need to have closure. But I believe we'll never have another period like that again. Yeah.
But I spoke to, and last year I did a lot of work following persons, tracking down relatives whose families, whose probably sons were killed and during that period, and they mentioned that you had represented. It would have appeared that you did a lot of representation on the ground in the courts, representing those persons who were affected, whose relatives were killed.
Yes, a lot of my time was spent in court. A lot of young boys were fixed with these charges, murder charges. Some of them had multiple murder charges. It was ridiculous. One of the things from that period I'll never forget is that when these young boys turn up in the court in the vehicles, they took them in the courtyard, and they have to come out of the vehicles. They were between 12 and 15, and you could see their eyes were blank, their faces were vacant, more or less. So, and they were in this situation where they were in the prison with hardened criminals, so only they could tell you about their experiences, But it was a tough time for them. I actually had to do one murder case after the other for these young men, but it had to be done, so I had no difficulty in doing it. But these charges were so specious that if one person is charged, I remember there was a situation when a 40-year-old boy was charged with 3 murder charges. And when they were doing the first one, they actually tendered the so-called confession statement for the third one. So they mixed them up, and those were, notwithstanding, they were still committed. So they spent their core years, adolescent years in prison. They grew up in prison. When I got them off in the sizes, don't forget, after the committal might take 2 years, 3 years, and then they have to wait another 4 to 5 years. So by the time you got them out, they were big, adults, and they lost their lives in that prison. So, we hope they were able to be rehabilitated. It was a tough period, though, and I recall when any mail that moved in Buxton on that particular day was thrown into trucks, vehicles, and taken and put into the pasture by Evelary. It's a rough time.
Akisha, you're young. You graduated recently from the University of Ghana. You did a Bachelor in Communication Studies. Tell me about your involvement in politics, and then based on what the AG would have said and based on what history would have shown us, what is the East Coast corridor like now compared to the period of the Troubles? So we'll start off talking about your days, your early start off in politics. What drew you to the APNU as a young person?
Okay, well, Svetlana, my brief history in politics started when I joined a very humble non-profit organization in Victoria. It's called the Victoria Youth Development Organization. And upon joining this group and getting involved in community projects, I realized the importance of local democracy and politics as a young person. And while in the group, I've come into contact with a number of government officials and ministers. And as of lately, I would have came into contact with the Attorney General, who I would say has fostered within me a realization of why young people must get involved in politics. It's very important as a young person to understand your vital role in the development of your country. And as it relates to the difference between
The
then
Troubles, yeah.
and now, while I'm very young, I can't say much about what would have happened before, but what I can say now is that there is a new type of, what I would say, freedom, especially under this government, to express yourself and express your political views in an area where I come from. I would say that as it relates to politics, that myself and youth, the persons in the community, that there isn't what I would call a fear anymore. It's a different time now. Based on what the AG would have just said, I realized that we have come a long way, and I'm grateful for all the things that he would have done, and also other persons in that time, so that we can have this freedom now.
So simply put, the crime rate is significantly down in your community along the East Coast corridor. People are not fearful to walk in that area. Persons are not on a daily basis arrested without cause. That's the situation now on the ground?
Yes, that's how I would put it, yes. And in other communities, like that would have been painted badly, let's say Buxton and so forth. In those areas, you can walk at any time of the night without fear. And so I would say that there's a huge difference now.
Okay. So, AJ, if you could tell me, and maybe Akisha could add it too, some of the concerns, because I know that you've been on the ground, you've been speaking to persons. I remember I went to a meeting sometime in 2019 with you, and you were addressing land rights issues or issues relating to land allocation and so forth. If you could tell us a bit about some of the issues that residents would have brought to you since you would have taken office in 2015 as the AG and as somebody who's responsible for that corridor with respect to the APNU+AFC coalition.
Well, you would expect after 23 years, issues were many and they were myriad. In terms of land, for example, lots of persons had made applications for land, and those applications never saw the light of day. And when we came into office, they then sought to get us to revive their applications, and we were able to treat with many as far as we could within the rules that have been established for an applicant to qualify, to be qualified to obtain a lot. Another issue which arose though was in relation to co-op societies. The basic principle that underpins a co-op society is that they establish themselves into these co-ops. So for purpose of, for example, utilizing land, whether for agriculture, housing, and the like, but their lands are really in community. It's one transport, but there's no subdivision. What I found now that is trending is that members of co-op society, certainly on the East Coast, they're now looking to see whether they could get individual titles for their land. And we're actually exploring that with the Central Housing and Planning. Some people had started the process before we actually came into office in some areas like Enmore North, Dutch Cab, and so places like that, and Anne's Grove. So we try to resolve Paradise. So we try to resolve those issues, and we are working along with the Central Housing and Planning and also the CCDO from the Ministry of Social Protection. That is the Chief Cooperative Development Officer. So, for example, in Beirut, when we were there, and they had to have the whole place had to be reassessed and reevaluated, and a new plan drawn up. So that is in progress, but we hope to settle all these issues.
Okay, so let's turn our attention now to the big rally that is set for Friday, the 24th of January at Golden Grove. AG, tell me about who are some of the speakers that residents or persons along the East Coast corridor who will be attending that rally could expect?
Well, primarily these rallies are rallies that are organized by the APNU+AFC coalition around the country. It's our rotation now on the East Coast. We will be holding our rally on Friday the 24th at the Golden Grove Community Ground, 5 p.m. All rallies really are, the focus of all rallies will be the feature presentation by the candidate, presidential candidate, His Excellency the President of Guyana, who is still President of Guyana, and as an incumbent president is seeking re-election. But you have also entertainment that is relevant to our platform. For example, one of the performers will be singing 23 into 4 can't go, that type of thing. So a lot of the presentations are relevant to the APNU+AFC platform. We will, of course, have the National School of Dance and other performances, but the rally is expected to be a massive one, and one with entertainment coupled with the seriousness of the address by His Excellency the President.
Is the Prime Ministerial candidate going to be there, and will you be addressing the people?
Yes, the Prime Ministerial candidate will be there. I am not advised to the contrary. In terms of our local, the welcome will be done by the current regional chair, Governor Genevieve Allen. There'll be, I will do a presentation on the legality of the government, and a young person will introduce the president, and of course you'll have someone presenting on the developments that were occasioned on the East Coast during the tenure of our government this past 4.5 years.
So you have a comprehensive program. Akeisha, if you could tell me a bit about youth involvement. You're a young person, you're sitting on the planning committee. Tell me about the other young people that are on the committee and young people's participation in these rallies based on your assessment. I'm sure you would have gone out to other rallies. What is the situation on the ground?
I would say that as it relates to the planning committee, we have a number of youths that are quite involved with what's going on. And I must say that, quite contrary to some of the things that persons might have heard, young people are really involved and they're taking interest in their country. As it relates to what's happening on the ground at the rallies, the youth turnout a lot of the time is very overwhelming. I would say there are lots of youths that come out and they listen to the message. Of course, they also enjoy the entertainment, and they go away knowing what this government has planned for the decade of development and moving onward. And I would also say that my charge to youths is that you must come out and vote. This decision is very vital to what happens to your country, what happens to future generations. So on March 2nd, which is about 6 weeks away from today, I'm encouraging you to go out and to put your X next to the AFC APNU slot.
Okay, so I'm happy that you're encouraging persons to vote because I know some persons would often say, I don't like politics, I don't want to get involved, that shouldn't concern me, at the end of the day, I still have to work from 9 to 5. That's some of the things you hear young people say at times, sadly. But I'm happy that you're encouraging persons to participate in this very democratic process. The AG, if you could tell me about the voting population on the East Coast Corridor, and what is it you hope to take away when it comes to Elections Day? What's your aim?
The voting population is roughly around 102,000 voters. We actually share those votes more or less equally on the East Coast between ourselves and the opposition. The last time the margin was about 2,000 difference. But we are hoping now to eclipse and have a substantial margin of votes over the opposition. Our policy is one of inclusion, and we are targeting every community on the East Coast. And the communities on the East Coast are villages, African villages, the way they evolved from emancipation, and other communities that one might want to describe as Indo-Guyanese communities. But largely is a very mixed population of reflecting all our ethnicities. And we are targeting all ethnicities on the East Coast because of our policy of inclusion. And we've been getting favorable results, and people are happy to listen to the message of the APNU+AFC and the vision of President Granger, and the plans that he has for young people. We have this decade of development with 4 states: the digital state, the petroleum state, the green state, and the education state. So everyone is enthused. We in communities, they ask for our paraphernalia, our flags, they wish our jerseys, and all our flags and posters and so. So we get a very good responses in the non-traditional communities because of the policies we adopted.
Yes, you're expecting an overwhelming turnout.
You leave no community behind.
No community behind. Now, important to notice that I think today there was a release that came out from one of the opposition members who alleged that, well, who's accusing the APNU+AFC candidates of, one of the ministers would have said, oh, be vigilant when you, on voting day, ensure that everything is done according to the laws of Guyana with respect to the ballot boxes, that they do not go elsewhere and so on. But that is being taken in another context as to say that you're inciting some kind of violence. Is that the case? What's your take? Your response? I would ask if that's the case, but
no, obviously it's not the case. I will tell you that.
Yeah.
We're not into that type of agitation. You know who does the agitation in that way. I know on the East Coast, I have said that since 2011, that you have to protect the ballot boxes by just following it, observe until it reaches its place of destination. Because of the attempts before by opposition to take over ballot boxes. We know of an incident last election at Newton's Hill where we got a report that the opposition was trying to remove ballot boxes from the polling place. Actually, where this polling place is, there's an adjoining road that leads down to the back in the directions of the seawall. And we got it just in time. So they had to come back out from the back with the boxes, which they said they were taken to GCOM or whatever. But you have to be vigilant, and there's no room for skullduggery. But there's no way would it be an occasion or opportunity to create any violence or any mayhem in relation to elections.
It's just to be on the guard, to be on the lookout.
To be vigilant. I mean, I know there's somebody who had said that it doesn't make sense you taking part in a plebiscite, public election and you're not protecting your vote. You have to protect your vote.
Okay. AG, and I'll ask both you and Keisha, as we wrap up today's program, I know the President would have spoken about a decade of development and so on. You're a candidate on the list. What Guyanese could expect from the APNU+AFC and from you, what the people of East Coast who look up to you and who you would have worked with over the years can expect going forward, 2020 and beyond?
Well, first of all, they would expect transformation and change. And they would see a Guyana that is completely different from the one that they have now. Certainly on the East Coast, you see, when I was driving a couple nights, you see the state of the road and the lights on the road. It just takes you to a big city in North America and other developed countries. So that's just a start. So it's going to be a completely different country because of the oil and gas wealth and because of the security we have put in place for the protection of that wealth, like namely the sovereign, the Natural Reserve Fund, from which you will take out money for infrastructure development and other budgetary measures, including the education and digital state, etc. You could expect the use of the proceeds from oil and gas to develop the green state. And remember, the vision for the green state is 2040. So this decade of development is within the context of the overarching development goal. And the resources to develop the green state because there's no contradiction between the two. One, it deals with sustainable energy, solar, wind, and hydro, and clean energy, and the question of protecting the forests and the low carbon development strategy, maintaining the forest cover. Of course, you know, we are the lungs of the world in the Guyana Shield. Guyana is part of the Guyana Shield, and stretched from Colombia, Brazil, right through to Suriname. We have a large part of the world's freshwater supplies. Of course, that is remaining. And so the green state is vital, and that will have to be developed with the resources, or it ought to be developed. It is not a cabinet decision, but my own reasoning suggests that it will be developed in that manner. Of course, the president wants to remove the distinction between the coast and the hinterland, so you could expect to see a bridge over the Demerara, new bridge over the Demerara River, and a bridge over the Escribo River. The road from Linden to Lethem, and other connecting roads and highways up in the hinterland that would enable you to drive from Georgetown or even from Bordeaux to the hinterland and beyond. So there's going to be a lot of transformation. Now, in terms of education and preparing young people to take the opportunities that among this young generation, it really is best situated. There's never been another generation with so many opportunities beckoning. We have a program, an education program of skills training and also for academic. If you wish to go right down to the tertiary, the university level, we have returned or restored free education at the university level. The president has done so. And so we find that the various training opportunities that abound within various ministries, the president just reintroduced a youth corps and Kurukuru, and that has a lot of that would take over a lot of those training programs that would have been disparate around the place and concentrate them. And that is, the college is on the Linden Highway, but there are other branches throughout the country. But young people must avail themselves of the opportunity for training and development. Of course, if they want to be entrepreneurs, small business people, micro, small, medium enterprises, they could get seed money because there's provision for that. The SLED program at the Ministry of Social Protection, you could get as much as $8 million if you have a viable project. And so opportunities abound for young people. And in terms of the oil and gas sector, we had started giving scholarships to those bright young people who had come out, so they could go to train in the oil and gas sector, in physics, in chemistry, engineering, biology. All these things are already in place so that the young people would be able to take their rightful place.
Okay. Akisha, tell me about your what Guyanese could expect as a young professional and as a young politician from you, and what are your hopes going forward?
Well, I would like to, first of all, allude to some of the things that this government has done during their time. I would like to say that this government boasts of the single largest investment into the water sector. And I think young people should expect more development in terms of education, as the Attorney General would have also said. In terms of technology, we are living in the digital economy, and it's already here, and they should expect more in terms of, let's say, in terms of housing. The Central Housing and Planning Authority, they're revising their policies to aid more young people for having better housing and land and so forth. As well, the president and the government continues to deliver on their promises to bridge the inequalities between the hinterland and the coastal region. And the persons in hinterland region, in terms of education again, should expect more. The Ministry of Education has been doing a lot there. And as we continue on the decade of development, I think more should be expected in terms of that. And yeah, I think that's basically.
Okay, just to recap as we prepare to leave, the meetings, the rally set for Friday. And one other question, if somebody's living in Linden or living in Berbice, other parts of the country who would like to come out and support that rally, would a transportation arrangements be put in place to them? Any system of the sort?
Well, look, generally, all roads lead to rallies. And the attendance doesn't necessarily have to be organized. People just find a way. On the East Coast, when there was the Hope Town rally, communities organized themselves to get to Hope Town. And the same thing would happen with the East Coast rally. You know? So we expect people from all over. But the brunt of the people, obviously, that would be in the venue would be the people from the East Coast itself. And I find now that people on the East Coast are now really sensitized and mobilized, that you're finding greater responses to our entreaties, and a lot more people are coming up to the village meetings. You know, last day, for example, in BV, I had a meeting with about 300 to 400 persons in just New Market Street. So at Bachelor's Adventure the other night by the Four Corners, similar situation, Buxton. So the whole idea is to get down. Some of these villages have good depths, you know. So, for example, the Victoria is about 11 miles inside from the front road. So you got to go down into the interstices in all these villages and reach the people and bring them up. And a lot of work has been done in these communities. That yesterday, as I said, I was in BV. As East Coast, I have 3 meetings, and I had to go in each area and try and assist in setting it up and so. And when I was in BV, a car pulled up. It was on Republic Drive. And the occupant said, "Mr. Williams, I know when you were here, you said, you promised us you'll give us this road. And you see how I am driving on this nice, sweet, smooth road? You delivered." That's what he told me yesterday. I said the APNU+AFC delivered, you know. But you knew the state of those communities on the East Coast during the 23 years. It was brutal.
Okay.
You know.
So, Akisha, you could wrap up. Tell us a bit about, just a recap, the rally, where exactly it will be held, the time, and so forth. Who are some of the artists that will be featured? I know the National Dance Group company would also be featured as well. So for our viewers listening, just a word of encouragement.
So the rally will be held on Friday the 24th of January 2020, and it will be at 5 p.m. at the Golden Grove Community Center ground. We are expecting performances from Melissa Roberts, better known as Vanilla. We'll also be having performances from the National Dance School and Mark Batson. The speakers that you should expect would be the Attorney General, the Prime Ministerial Candidate and Minister of Public Security, the Honorable Kemraj Ramjatan. You can also expect a delivery from His Excellency President David Granger. And
the feature presentation.
And he'll be doing the feature presentation.
Yes, the President will be doing the feature presentation.
Okay, so I must say thank you so much, AG and Akisha, for joining us today on Vantage Point. To our viewers, thank you for viewing today's program. Do join us tomorrow for another edition. I've been your host, Svetlana Marshall.